This week, Dave and I talk about crops and field conditions. I'll tell you a little bit about what it's been like to be a news director for just a few months and autonomous vehicles in the field and on the road. This is Rural Reflections. Welcome to another edition of the Rural Reflections podcast. Dave Nelson's in Carrington, North Dakota. Grant Nelson here at the studios of Thief River Falls Radio. Dave, hello, and how's it been going?
Oh, it's been going okay, and hi back at you. We've missed any ugly weather. We would have liked to have a little more rain, but we only got a quarter of an inch. But it's still greener now than it was last year at this time, so we're ahead of that. And I guess it's been kind of a bland summer for us, but it's been going okay.
Yeah, last year everybody had misplaced rain. We didn't get it when we needed it until the very end, and then when we didn't need it during harvest, the skies opened up. And I remember you were talking about you had a lot of track usage out there, and nowadays you probably don't need those tracks so much.
No, I have people that would like to have their tracks sent back or sold to somebody else now, so it's funny how things change from year to year, and yet I don't know how far we have to really go in North Dakota, but I'm sure there's a place that wants tracks yet that, you know, is still in the state. So it's funny. It's never, I guess it's nothing boring about the weather.
No, that's for sure. Well, there was some farmers combining grain on Thursday, I believe it was. No, it was on Friday, right before the rain came. And they had tracks on, and they weren't leaving ruts, but they were definitely leaving more than just an impression on the black dirt. And they were using tracks on a pretty good sized combine out in the field, and they were floating along nicely, and they were doing a good job of cutting, but you definitely could see still a little bit of well, not exactly a rut, but there was some curb on the outside of the tracks.
Yeah, I know there's places even within 30, 40 miles of here that have had a lot more rain. And some of those guys haven't taken their tracks off yet. They just ran them all last winter, and they just barely got done combining with them.
Yeah.
And now they're going to start again, and they're leaving them on just in case.
Well, they're getting their use out of the combines. We talked about this a couple days ago, just you and I, about the John Deere has come out with a combine when put together with a header is over $1 million now. I always wonder how people can afford such a thing. I mean, I realize it's like a factory on wheels and it's very advanced, but I just wonder how fast you have to run that or how long you have to run that to make it make sense.
I don't know. It's got to go over quite a few acres because, you know, a lot of guys base their purchasing on cost per acre, you know. So it's got to cover some ground. And, of course, these new combines and that, the 50-foot headers and things like that, you know, you can really cover some ground, you know. Yeah,
you can. The headers, that's a whole nother deal. By the time you get the headers, you could probably go out and buy, I don't know, probably 10 old 1480 Case International combines that probably are still in okay shape.
Yeah, you probably could.
I see people every once in a while, 1480s, 1680s. I see 7720 John Deeres for sale, 8820s every once in a while that are in pretty nice shape. I wonder if anybody uses that capacity combine anymore, Dave.
Oh, I think there are a few. You know, I know of several people that are combine collectors, so they'll go and buy the low price combine if it's something similar to what they have and take it home and run them, and they have a whole bunch of worn out ones sitting in their tree rows and stuff, you know, so there are people that do that.
I think there must be some sort of comfort that comes from having a tree row full of combines or tractors or something. I mean, it's sort of an outdoor collection or something like that, I'd say.
Yeah, or a memorial to the stuff for what it's done for them or something, because there are some people that just keep every old piece of iron they can,
Yeah. Over the weekend, we had a hot dog feed here at the radio station. I talked to one farmer, said he's looking at beans that are probably the best he's ever seen, and I would say he's in his 70s. We've gotten rain at the right time. I talked to Daryl, our brother Daryl, and he said that they're getting some really nice beans over by Argyle. Pretty nice stuff north of Thief River Falls. Good timely rain, so the pods actually fill instead of those pods dropping off for lack of moisture. What's it looking like out in North Dakota?
Well, right around here, the corn is probably the best looking of any of the crops. And it's not very many acres of it. There wasn't much ground that they could actually get into early enough to plant corn on. So there's an awful lot of PP in the corn.
Okay.
Edible beans look pretty good. Soybeans, kind of mixed. The later ones didn't come up real evenly, and so there's, kind of a mixture of crops in the field. And then the next field you look at is beautiful. So there's going to be some very nice fields of beans. I wouldn't say they'll generally be all that way, but there's going to be some real nice ones. And the small grains, not real good. Mm-hmm. Nobody's bragging about that. Mm-hmm. They had a heck of a time to take off the barley that they have taken off, and the wheat is coming off a little bit at a time, but, they've sprayed it and waited. And, there was just a field combine here right next to town that ran about 40 bushels. So nowadays, when you're talking wheat yields, 40 bushels is not the place to shoot for. They're shooting for 60 bushels or something like that now. So
yeah. Dave, let's take a quick break. We'll do my audio column, and then we'll come back and talk some more. We'll talk a little bit about autonomous machinery, and we'll be right back with that. I'm Grant Nelson. This is Rural Reflections. Now, I've waited for a little to write this particular program, really more out of respect than anything else. I've written the column that this program is based on for almost 20 years, most of the time for the Northern Watch. I'm now the news director at Thief River Falls Radio, so it's a careful line I walk between the two worlds. I want to give everyone their due and proper respect, even to the point of asking Dave Hill, editor for the Thief River Falls Times and Northern Watch several weeks ago, about writing this week's program. Even after his permission, I continued to wait until now. Now, my work history as a dispatcher has been good preparation for what I do now, which is gather news. As a dispatcher, I gather facts and information, then condense it into something easily understood by others, which is basically what I do now. As a dispatcher, I had to quickly prioritize actions in order of importance and then act on my decisions. Assembling the news to me is really a matter of understanding what the average person wants in their news and then prioritizing it. I'm new to news writing. However, I'm not new to being a person. I don't like news that tries to offer me their take on the news or a pre-digested perspective. I want to be objective, which is the reason I try not to give my opinion too often. I feel like it spoils my objectivity. I have an opinion. However, I don't believe my opinion's more important than anybody else's opinion just because I have access to a microphone. I'd prefer to give the facts from trusted sources and allow people to craft their own opinions. Now, a few observations about the news from this side. First off, read the news story, the whole story. You must read more than just the headline, as most headlines only allow for a few words, so you'll never get the whole story in a headline. Read more than one story about any subject. As you read several stories about a subject, certain facts will begin to appear, almost like dots on a paper.
You can then begin to connect the dots and get a pretty true picture, even from sources that are very subjective. Also, follow links in a story back to source documents. You may be surprised how different you see the base information than that of the writers. There are two sides to every story. If someone tells you only one side of the story, they're lying to you. If you read only one side of the story, you're lying to yourself. If you get both sides of the story, you may get the truth. Now, I found a high school assignment in a folder my mom kept for me. In one English class, we were asked to write our future. I found one line prophetic in that I had hoped that one day I would end up at a radio station as a news director. It happened 38 years later. I'm Grant Nelson. This is Rural Reflections.
With brother Dave Nelson and Carrington Grant Nelson here at the studios of Thief River Falls Radio, back with you. Dave, we talked about autonomous stuff the other day, autonomous machinery. I brought it up with platoon trucking. That's something I just found out about here recently that they've done in Minnesota, where you can have 3 trucks together, and they're no more from front to back than between 50 and 90 feet apart. And the front driver controls braking and accelerating for all 3 trucks. And then the other drivers just control steering, and that's all they do. Unless an emergency happens, then they break in and they can take evasive maneuvers or whatever. The big idea is drafting to save on fuel that the trucks use during the haul. But there's other things that they're looking at too, like new truckers taking maybe the 3rd truck and learning from the truckers in front of them, and maybe economy of scale, being able to offer 3 trucks in a package instead of just one to haul loads better and perhaps get better loads, maybe get expedited service when you pick up a load. But this autonomy or RTK or GPS or light bars, it's been going on in agriculture for quite a long time, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think I started working with it in 2000, but so it's 20 years into it for us, and it's just kind of one step at a time going towards driverless machines,
Yeah.
So first of all, we see it guiding them up and down the field, Then they add in turning at the ends of the field. Then they add in other forms of, things that it can do as far as keeping an implement at a certain height and changing rates of application and prescription applying, and now we're at the point of self-adjusting combines, automated combines, balers that actually control what the tractor does. So it's just one step at a time towards fully autonomous vehicles,
Well, I've seen some people have even created their own autonomous grain carts, which I always think is the one application that seems to really lend itself, because you've got a truck in the end of the road or at the end of the field, you got a combine, and then you got the grain cart. So you've got 3 points to triangulate off of. And you can they typically control the grain cart and tractor when it gets up next to the combine as it's dumping in. But then after that, they kind of turn it loose, and the tractor and the grain cart go down to the end of the field, and there's a trucker sitting there inside the semi. And when the grain cart gets up there, the basically autonomous grain cart, then the trucker takes over control and brings it up so he can, load the truck fairly evenly. So that one I can really see that work. And I remember the first time I ever drove a tractor or did cultivation with equipped with GPS, there was a stack of magazines in the bottom of the cab. And I remember getting in there going, what in the world are there all these Field and Stream and Outdoor Life and all this kind of stuff magazines? And I thought, I can't fashion that, And I drove for about a half hour with this unit, and pretty soon I was finding myself going, maybe I'll pick up one of those magazines and read it. This is getting kind of boring, which I imagine that's the same mindset that those pictures of tractors running into power lines and that sort of thing generate, I would guess.
Yeah, there's always room for failure with that stuff. And yes, I'm sure the power lines and the power poles and all that coming down is a result of somebody falling asleep or, not paying attention. Things don't always work perfectly either, So, yeah, there's been a lot of incidents, I guess, due to that too. But by and large, it's pretty safe. I know one of the funniest things I was told about it, one of the guys came in and said, he said, I think I'm going to have to take up smoking again, so I have something to do with my hands while I'm making the rounds in the field. So, I mean, it's good, but there, of course, can be some little issues with it. I think the fully autonomous tractors and that kind of thing, they'll have a lot more protections in them as far as sensing and stuff. It's just like a drone, you fly a drone up too close to a tree and it'll stop flying, or at least some of them do. And so there'll be more protections as it goes along and as help gets harder and harder to find. I'm sure we're getting very close to test autonomous farming anyway, I mean, I don't think we're going to see everybody do it, but pretty soon there's going to be some of these farms that just do it, and they'll start it on a small scale and keep going just like everything else, and pretty soon that'll be the norm. They have your tractor out just doing the work for you, and you go and fill it up with seed every now and then when the drill gets empty, and there you go.
That's really something. I like the idea of the balers that can drive the tractor or can kind of command the tractor, or the self-monitoring combines, because that really gives you the opportunity to maybe get some not so skilled labor or entry-level labor into a position where they can really help you instead of just teaching them how to grind gears all the time.
Yes, I think so too. And I hear it now from the people that are buying these things. They don't want to be running after their dad or their wife or somebody, whoever is running the combine, that is not super skilled at it, Yeah. So instead, they have automation take over and do it for them, and then they can run the grain cart and chase after the combine and run the trucks and stuff like that others can't do, So.
Well, I remember when they didn't think so much of us when we got our automatic transmissions for the trucks, but then you realize how much less stress it puts on you. I mean, I know it sounds like a little thing just having to shift gears, but especially if you're doing short hauls, you're going up through the gears, down through the gears, up to you're probably doing 3 sets of that on the way in, maybe even 4, and 4 on the way back. And if you're not used to it, and if you don't know how to power shift and you're always clutching and everything like that, and you're blowing your shifts, having that automatic transmission's nice, and it makes the job a lot more appealing to a lot more people, I think.
Oh, yes. And the other thing with the automatic transmission, although, a lot of people think less of an automatic transmission than a manual one, they think it's less hardy and all that, but it really isn't. And you don't have a clutch that you're messing with. So you don't have to worry about the maintenance of that and so on. And there's other bonuses to it too, no twisted off drive shafts and things like that with that. And so yeah, those things are all there designed to be able to put somebody less than the top operator in the seat and still get a good job done.
Yeah. Well, Dave, you got anything else for us this week?
One more thing about the platoon trucking.
Okay.
I wonder on the interstate when you have 3 semis together like that, how many irate passers there's going to be on those guys.
I'll tell you what, I went on the Department of Transportation website, and they had posted it on their Facebook page, And most of the negative comments were exactly that. You're gonna have a block of trucks that are 300 feet long, I suppose, by the time you get everything along between three of them, and for passing and that sort of thing. Now, of course, this is the lanes in Minnesota so far are all 4 lanes, except I know like Highway 10 narrows down to 2 going through a couple of towns, but they're all 4 or 2 lane, or 4 lane highways. So that's a little bit better, but you're right. That was the complaint that was most often lodged.
Yeah.
So,
well, we'll see what the future holds.
That sounds good. Thanks very much, Dave. And as always, here's to the sunny slopes of yesteryear. And thanks for joining us on our Rural Reflections podcast here at the studios of Thief River Falls Radio.